April 14, 1945. A field of mud and churned earth outside Essen, Germany. The world is ending in thunder. Not the divine Wagnerian thunder promised by the propaganda ministry, but a grubby, monotonous, iron-throated roar. For 19-year-old Flak Helfer and Clara Richter, the sound has become the rhythm of her own heartbeat. It's the sound of the American Ninth Army's artillery, a god hammering the western edge of the Ruhr pocket into dust. Her 88mm anti-aircraft gun, pointed west, is silent. It has been silent for 2 days. There are no more shells. There is no more Luftwaffe to defend. The sky belongs to the P-47 Thunderbolts that circle like vultures, their engines a predatory drone that vibrates in your teeth. You learn to live with the drone. You learn to flinch when it changes pitch. Clara pulls the threadbare collar of her gray-blue Luftwaffe helper's uniform tighter against a wind that carries the scent of damp soil and cordite. The gun emplacement is a crater within a crater, a shallow bowl of splintered ammunition crates and spent brass casings. Her crew, 4 other teenage girls and a weary 50-year-old Wehrmacht veteran named Unteroffizier Schmidt, huddle beneath a camouflage net that does little to hide them and nothing to keep them warm. Their faces are pale, smudged with dirt, their eyes wide with the hollow look of those who have not slept properly in a week. They are the last dregs of the Reich's defense, children and old men, armed with museum pieces and dwindling hope. Clara's hands, raw and chapped from hauling shell casings, tremble as she tries to relight a tattered cigarette stub. The cheap paper tastes of chemicals. It is her last one. A jeep, a mud-caked Kubelwagen, bounces violently across the rutted track leading to their position. It skids to a halt, and Lieutenant Hessler jumps out. He is barely 22, but his face is a mask of strained authority, his movements jerky with sleeplessness and dread. He doesn't salute. No one does anymore. Richter, Schmidt, everyone, listen. His voice is rough, cracking under the strain. Command has collapsed. The 78th Infantry Division, the Americans, they've broken through at Wuppertal. They're rolling up the entire line. He gestures vaguely to the west, where the symphony of destruction is now punctuated by the distinct chattering cough of machine gun fire. It sounds closer. It is always closer. A girl named Anya, the youngest at 17, begins to cry silently, tears carving clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. Unteroffizier Schmidt places a heavy hand on her shoulder, but his own face is ashen. "Lieutenant," he says, his voice a low rumble. "Our orders?" Hessler lets out a short, bitter laugh. "Orders. The order is every man for himself. Field command is gone. We are to disband. Destroy the gun, discard your uniforms if you can, and try to make your way home. Try to melt away." He looks at the girls, his expression a flicker of something like pity, quickly suppressed. "The war is over here. Get home. To your families. Now." He doesn't wait for a response. He jumps back into the Kubelwagen, which spins its wheels in the mud before lurching away, disappearing over the rise. A ghost abandoning other ghosts. For a moment, no one moves. The finality of his words hangs in the air, heavier than the smoke. Disband. Go home. Home for Clara is a small terraced house on the outskirts of Essen, less than 10 kilometers from here. It feels like a world away. Her father, a veteran of the Great War who lost 2 fingers on his left hand at Verdun, is there. He has been quiet for months, his disillusionment a palpable silence in their small home. Her mother is gone, a victim of an RAF bombing raid 2 years prior. It is just him and her. Destroy the gun. Schmidt nods grimly and pulls a demolition charge from a wooden crate. He places it carefully on the gun's breech, his movements methodical, practiced. "Girls," he says, not looking at them. "You heard the lieutenant. Get your things. What little you have. Go. Now. I will take care of this." Clara looks at the massive steel barrel of the Flak 88, once a symbol of German strength, now just a piece of scrap metal waiting to be torn apart. She feels nothing. No pride, no sorrow, only a vast, terrifying emptiness. Anya is sobbing openly now. Clara grabs her small rucksack containing a spare set of socks, a photograph of her mother, and a half-eaten loaf of hard black bread. She turns her back on the gun, on the war, and starts walking east, toward a home she praises still standing. The first fat drops of a cold April rain begin to fall, mixing with the soot and the fear.
The 10-kilometer walk is a journey through the apocalypse. The road to Essen is a graveyard of military hardware. A Panzer IV sits askew, its turret blown clean off, its blackened interior exposed to the weeping sky. Overturned trucks, their cargo of ammunition or rations, spilled across the tarmac, lie like dead animals. Columns of Wehrmacht soldiers shuffle past her, moving in the same direction. They are no longer an army. They are a tide of ghosts, faces vacant, rifles held loosely or not at all. No one speaks. The only sounds are the squelch of boots in mud, the distant crump of artillery, and the incessant rain. You see the true face of defeat not in the burning tanks, but in the eyes of the men walking away from them. Clara pulls her frayed woolen cap lower, trying to make herself invisible. Her Luftwaffe uniform, once a source of pride, now feels like a target. She keeps to the edge of the road, her gaze fixed on the ground. Every distant engine roar makes her heart seize, convinced it's an American Sherman tank about to crest the next hill. But the front line is a fluid, chaotic thing. Pockets of resistance fight on in stubborn denial, while the main force simply dissolves. The journey takes 3 hours. By the time she reaches the familiar cobbled streets of her neighborhood, the rain has soaked her to the bone. The neat rows of workers' houses are miraculously intact, though windows are boarded up and the silence is unnerving. This is the quiet before the storm. Her own front door, number 14 on Schillerstrasse, is ajar. A cold knot of dread tightens in her stomach. "Vati?" she calls out, her voice thin. "Father?" Silence. She pushes the door open. The small living room is in disarray. Drawers are pulled out, their contents strewn across the floor. A framed picture of her mother lies face down, the glass shattered. Panic claws at her throat. She runs through the house, to the kitchen, then up the narrow stairs to the bedrooms. Empty. The same chaos everywhere. Then she remembers. The cellar. The place they stored what little they had left of value. Sacks of potatoes bought on the black market, jars of preserved vegetables from last summer's garden, her mother's silver candlesticks, and the small wooden box containing their savings. She clatters down the steep wooden stairs into the damp, earthy-smelling darkness. The cellar door is splintered, hanging off one hinge, and it is empty. Utterly, completely empty. The shelves are bare. The potato sacks are gone. The corner where the candlesticks were hidden is vacant. A single overturned jam jar lies in a sticky pool on the stone floor. It is in that moment of cold, stark realization that she hears a floorboard creak above her. She freezes, her breath catching in her chest. A figure appears at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the weak light from the kitchen. "Clara? My child, is that you?" The voice is familiar, oily. Herr Schmidt. Not Unterofficer Schmidt from her flak battery, but his older brother, the portly local block warden, a man who always had a friendly smile and a piece of hard candy for the neighborhood children. He is carrying one of their potato sacks over his shoulder. Herr Schmidt. Clara's voice is a whisper. "What is happening? Where is my father?" Schmidt descends the stairs slowly, his face a grotesque mask of pity. "Ah, Clara, such terrible times. Your father, he was speaking foolishness, defeatist talk. You know how the SS are these days. They cannot tolerate it. They came for him, not an hour ago." Clara stares at him, then at the sack on his shoulder. It's their sack. She recognizes the small tear near the top that she had tried to mend. She looks at his feet. His boots are caked in mud, and next to them, on the stone floor, is a single muddy footprint that is not her own. Another larger footprint. The truth hits her with the force of a physical blow. "You," she breathes, the word filled with a venom she didn't know she possessed. "You told them. You stole our food, and you turned in my father to save yourself." Schmidt's friendly demeanor evaporates, replaced by a rat-like cunning. "One must be practical, Clara. The Americans will be here any day. The SS are desperate, looking for scapegoats. Your father was always loud with his opinions. It was him or me. And these supplies, they will do no good for a man in a Gestapo cell. We must survive." He takes a step toward her. Clara takes a step back, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a sob of pure, undiluted hatred. Betrayal. It was a word she associated with grand tales of espionage and treason, not with the smiling man who lived 3 doors down. It was a quieter, uglier, more personal thing. It was the theft of potatoes and the casual sacrifice of a neighbor. At that moment, a new sound cuts through the rain. A deep, mechanical rumble, accompanied by a metallic clatter. It's not the familiar sound of German panzers. It's closer, heavier. It is the sound of an M4 Sherman tank, its tracks chewing up the cobblestones of Schillerstrasse. Herr Schmidt's face goes white. The war had arrived at their doorstep.
The world outside the cellar explodes in noise and motion. A man's voice, amplified by a bullhorn, bellows in a language Clara barely understands, the English harsh and alien. "Achtung! All civilians, stay in your homes. All German soldiers, surrender now. Lay down your arms." The command is punctuated by the sharp crack of a rifle shot, followed by the sound of shattering glass from a house down the street. Herr Schmidt drops the sack of potatoes, which lands with a dull thud, and scrambles back up the cellar stairs. "Stay here, girl. Stay quiet," he hisses, before disappearing into the house. Clara remains frozen in the dark, her mind a whirlwind of betrayal and fear. The man who had condemned her father was cowering upstairs, while the monsters from the propaganda posters were now just outside her door. The front door of the house bursts open with a splintering crash. Heavy, booted footsteps pound across the floorboards above her. Shouts in English. "Clear! Check the back! Upstairs! Go!"
Clara presses herself against the cold, damp stone wall of the cellar, trying to make herself smaller, trying to stop the frantic hammering of her own heart. She hears a startled cry from upstairs, then Schmidt's voice, high-pitched and pleading in broken German and English. "Nicht schießen! No shoot! Civilian! Zivilist!" There's a gruff American voice, a thud, and then the sound of Schmidt being dragged across the floor. The cellar door is kicked fully open, flooding the space with gray light. A figure stands at the top of the stairs. He is huge, silhouetted, a giant in a strange rounded helmet. In his hands, he cradles an M1 Garand rifle. "Anybody down there?" he calls, his voice surprisingly calm. Clara can't speak. She can only stare, paralyzed. Another soldier appears behind the first one. This one has sergeant stripes on his sleeve. He shines a flashlight down, the beam catching Clara full in the face. She flinches, throwing an arm up to shield her eyes. The light catches the silver eagle and swastika on her uniform jacket. "We got one," the sergeant says, his voice flat, weary. "Looks like a Luftwaffe girl. Come on up, Fräulein. Slowly. Hand hoch. Hands up." Clara understands the command. Slowly, her limbs feeling like lead, she raises her trembling hands and walks up the stairs into the wreckage of her own home. The living room is filled with American soldiers. They are big men, bigger than the German boys she was serving with. They wear olive drab uniforms, heavy with equipment. Canteens, ammo pouches, grenades hanging from their webbing like strange fruit. They smell of wet wool, sweat, and American cigarettes. Their faces are smudged with dirt and stubble, their eyes tired but alert. They are not the snarling, demonic beasts from Dr. Kerbel's newsreels. They are just men. Exhausted. Dangerous men. A young corporal with freckles points his rifle at her chest, his finger resting near the trigger. The sergeant waves him off. "Easy, Casey. She's just a kid." He looks Clara up and down, his gaze lingering on her Luftwaffe helper insignia. "You a soldier?" Clara finds her voice. "Helferin," she manages, the word catching in her throat. "Auxiliary." The sergeant nods slowly. "Close enough. You're a prisoner of war." He turns to his men. "Get her processed with the others." Two soldiers gently but firmly take her by the arms. They lead her out into the rain-swept street. The world has been transformed. An M4 Sherman tank dominates the small road, its engine idling with a deep, powerful rumble. GIs are everywhere, moving with practice efficiency, clearing houses, rounding up the handful of dazed Wehrmacht and Volkssturm soldiers who had been hiding in the neighborhood. They are herded into a small, growing column in the middle of the street. Herr Schmidt is there, his hands bound with a plastic cord, protesting his innocence to anyone who will listen. No one is listening. Clara has pushed into the line. A GI with a clipboard takes down her name, rank, and unit, his pencil scratching on the damp paper. She is just a name on a list now, a piece of inventory. They are marched away from Schillerstrasse, away from her home, away from everything she has ever known. The column of prisoners grows with every block, a shuffling, gray river of defeated men and a few women like herself, flowing through the ruined city. The American guards are efficient, impersonal. They don't speak to the prisoners. They just watch them with those tired, vigilant eyes. They march for what feels like hours, until they reach a large schoolyard surrounded by a high brick wall. The yard is already packed with hundreds, perhaps thousands, of German prisoners. They sit or lie on the muddy ground, a sea of gray uniforms under the relentless rain. The gates are closed behind them. Clara is pushed forward into the mass of bodies and finds a small space near the wall. She sinks to the ground, the cold mud soaking through her trousers immediately. She wraps her arms around herself, shivering, and looks at the faces around her. All she sees is a mirror of her own despair. The scale of the defeat is no longer an abstraction. It is here. It is 1,000 hollow eyes in a muddy schoolyard in Essen.
The schoolyard is a circle of hell. As day bleeds into a wet, miserable dusk, the number of prisoners swells. The guards herd more and more defeated soldiers through the gates until the yard is a dense pack of humanity. There is no shelter from the rain, which transitions from a steady drizzle to a cold, driving downpour. The mud becomes a slurry, clinging to boots and uniforms, sucking the warmth from everyone. There is no food, no water. The air grows thick with the smell of wet wool, unwashed bodies, and defeat. Men groan. Some weep quietly. Others stare into the middle distance with a catatonic emptiness. Clara sits with her back against the cold brick wall, her knees drawn up to her chest, trying to conserve what little body heat she has left. The hunger is a physical pain now, a hollow ache in her stomach that seems to echo the emptiness in her soul. Her world has been systematically dismantled in less than a day. Her home, her father, her country, her future, all gone. Betrayed not by the enemy she was taught to hate, but by a neighbor. captured by soldiers she was taught were barbarians, who had so far treated her with a weary indifference that was somehow more unnerving than outright cruelty. She is nothing, a number, a piece of the debris of a lost war. She watches the American guards patrol the perimeter atop the wall. They are silhouetted against the failing light, their helmets and rifles stark and menacing. They are her captors, the arbiters of her fate. They hold all the power. They have food, warmth, freedom. She has only the mud and the rain. One of the guards stops his patrol directly above where she is sitting. Clara tenses, pulling her head down, trying to become invisible. She can hear the scuff of his boots on the brick, the jingle of his equipment. She risks a glance upward. It is the sergeant from her house, the one who had called her a kid. He is looking down into the yard, his expression unreadable in the gloom. His gaze sweeps over the mass of prisoners, and for a moment it seems to lock onto her. Clara's heart hammers against her ribs. Is he looking for her? Is she in some kind of trouble? She quickly looks away, staring at her own muddy boots, expecting a harsh command, a shove, something to reinforce her status as the enemy. Instead, she hears a soft metallic click, then a quiet rustling. Something small and dark lands in the mud next to her with a soft plop. Clara flinches, staring at it. It's a can, a small olive drab can, a K-ration. Beside it, a small paper-wrapped rectangle has also fallen. She looks up at the sergeant. He is still there, looking down, but not directly at her anymore. He gives a barely perceptible nod, so slight she thinks she might have imagined it, then resumes his patrol, walking slowly along the wall as if nothing has happened. Clara stares at the items in the mud. For a long moment, she doesn't move. It could be a trick. It could be poison. The propaganda films had been full of stories about American treachery, but the gesture had been quiet, secretive. It was not for show. It was an act meant for an audience of one. Her trembling hands reach out and pick up the can. It's cold and slick with mud. She wipes it on her trousers. The label is in English. Processed cheese. She picks up the rectangle. It's a D-ration bar. Emergency chocolate. It feels heavy, solid, real. Her hunger is a raging beast, but it is dwarfed by a wave of utter, staggering confusion. Why? Why would he do this? He is the victor. She is the vanquished. He is the enemy. She is the enemy. The world as she understood it did not allow for this. Kindness was for comrades, for your folk. The enemy was to be fought, overcome, or, in defeat, feared. They were not supposed to offer you food. It was Herr Schmidt, a German, a neighbor, who had stolen her food and condemned her father. It was this American, this faceless soldier of a conquering army, who had just given her a meal. The contradiction is so profound, so jarring, it feels like a physical shock. She holds the can of cheese and the chocolate bar in her lap, the cold metal a stark reality in her hands. The rain continues to fall, washing the mud from the labels, but it cannot wash away the impossible kindness that now sits in the ruins of her world.
There is no tool to open the can. Clara uses the edge of a small, sharp rock she finds half buried in the mud, scraping and punching at the lid with numb fingers. The work is slow, arduous. The men around her watch with listless curiosity, but no one interferes. The small act of survival is a private one. Finally, the metal gives way. She peels back a jagged section of the lid, revealing a pale, orange-colored paste inside. The smell is strange, intensely savory, completely alien. She uses her finger to scoop out a small amount and brings it to her lips. The taste is salty, sharp, overwhelmingly rich. It's the first real food she has had in 2 days, and the effect is immediate and dizzying. She eats slowly, carefully, forcing herself to make the small portion last. It is more than just sustenance. It is a sacrament. When the cheese is gone, she unwraps the D-ration bar. The chocolate is dark and slightly bitter, designed for energy, not pleasure. But to Clara, it is the sweetest thing she has ever tasted. As the coarse chocolate melts on her tongue, it feels as if a lifetime of indoctrination is melting with it. You are what you eat. She is eating American food, enemy food, and it tastes like survival. It tastes like a truth more powerful than any slogan she had ever chanted in the Bund Deutscher Mädel. The truth is that her own countrymen betrayed her for a sack of potatoes, while a foreign soldier showed her a moment of human grace for no reason at all. She looks up from her small meal at the world around her. The schoolyard is no longer just a mass of gray despair. She sees individuals. A boy younger than her, with the insignia of the Hitler Youth on his arm, crying silently. An old Volkssturm man, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, staring blankly at the rifle of a guard. A Wehrmacht officer, his uniform still immaculate,
trying to maintain a posture of dignity amidst the filth. They were all cogs in the same machine, a machine that had chewed them up and spit them out into this muddy yard. And the guards, the Americans, she watches them now with new eyes. They are not the square-jawed, bloodthirsty monsters of the posters. They are young men, like Sergeant Miller, with tired lines around their eyes. They stand in the same rain, look out at the same ruined city. They are caught in this too. One of them lights a cigarette, the flare of the match briefly illuminating a face that looks impossibly young. He could be one of the boys from her neighborhood. The entire architecture of her world, built on the simple, brutal pillars of us and them, collapses. If Herr Schmidt was us and Sergeant Miller was them, then the words had lost all meaning. What was loyalty? What was the fatherland? Was it the smiling block warden who would send you to your death to save his own skin? Or was it something else entirely, something she had never been taught, something that didn't have a flag or a uniform? Perhaps it was just a quiet moment of connection between two people on opposite sides of a war that had consumed everything. The sergeant had not seen a Luftwaffe girl or a Nazi. He had seen a hungry, frightened human being, and had acted. In that simple, silent transaction, he had given her more than just food. He had given her back a piece of her own humanity by acknowledging his. The rain finally stops as dawn approaches, a thin, watery light breaking through the gray clouds. The air is cold and clean. A new set of orders are shouted. The prisoners are being moved. They are formed into long columns and marched out of the schoolyard, heading west, toward the Rhine, toward the massive, notorious prison camps being set up there. Clara does not know what awaits her. Her future is a terrifying blank. She may starve in the camps. She may be lost for years. She will likely never see her father again. But as she shuffles forward in the long gray line, something inside her has fundamentally shifted. The war had taken everything from her, but in its final, violent moments, it had given her a strange and terrible gift: clarity. She was no longer Clara Richter, Flakhelferin of the Greater German Reich. She was just Clara, a survivor. And for the first time in a world of ruins, that felt like it might be enough. She looks toward the horizon, not knowing what she will find, but knowing with absolute certainty that the enemies she was supposed to fear were not the ones she had to watch out for.